So listen, I really was looking forward to talking to you, man, because I definitely admire what you're doing. So how would you categorize your profession?
It's funny because people ask me now, they're like, what do you do for a living? Like, what's your job? And I'm like, well, okay, let's break it down. So I still have my in-person training business here in the Maryland area where I only train a few people that I've had since like 2007. I don't take any more in-gym clients right now at that point. I got like 143 online clients that are worldwide right now. So that's an international training business that I do there. So technically I'm still an online trainer and an in-person trainer. I have a contract with Primeval Labs, so I travel for them, doing appearances and stuff for them. And I'm actually formulating my own products, which the first one will be out soon. So I'm actually formulating products. So I guess technically I produce supplements too. And I also consider myself a YouTuber. I mean, that's pretty much what they're labeled, the fitness branch of YouTubing, which is someone who gets paid to do YouTube that has, a substantial following. So I'm kind of like, it's hard to explain like what I consider myself. Well, I just kind of do my thing. I'm just me.
So how were you able to generate such following? I mean, you're not a professional bodybuilder per se, right? So how were you guys like yourself and Rich Piano were able to achieve that?
Well, I think what happened was, it's the same thing that we're seeing with Donald Trump. I'm not a big politics guy, but a lot of people are talking about him because he's saying things that a lot of people are already thinking. And what things like when I stopped competing, you don't think about the political side anymore, and you don't care about contracts and stuff. Same thing with Rich Piana when you stop competing and you just become yourself. I've had Phil Heath tell me, man, I wish I could say the things you can, but I can't. You know what I mean? Like I just can't. I have contracts, I have this, I have that. Like, you guys get to say the things that we really want to say and we're thinking. I would talk to other coaches and trainers and stuff at the gym. They were like, you should put these like on video, and I was like, nobody's gonna watch these things. They don't care. And I did a couple, and then it really started to blow up, and that's when I realized that there were all these different personalities on YouTube. And unlike bodybuilding, everybody's competing for that one trophy, so they're not really friends. Like, back when Arnold and those guys were competing, they were all friends. Nowadays, everybody's kind of competing for the contracts and for the Sandow trophy and all these things. Well, each one of us, we don't have to compete. Like, I don't have to compete with Rich Piana or Legends of Aesthetics or CT Fletcher. Each one of us have our own thing that makes us individual. And like when we travel on this, YouTube circuit now, we're all friends.
Now, you're very honest on your channel, and I've heard one of the stories you talk about molestation when you were younger and stuff like that. It's very honest. Do you ever regret saying certain things?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I don't even know what I say. Like, there's no script. I turn the camera on and I go. And sometimes I watch the video afterwards. I'm like, wow, I can't even believe I said that. But, that video, when I put it out, I didn't realize it would be one of the most powerful videos that, I would put out. It really made a lot of people, between emails and coming up to me and stuff like that, that have all gone through that. And, it was at a time in my life where me and my ex were splitting up, and I was already going through a bad time. And I had to confront this situation with my parents because they were both getting really old and unhealthy. And, if they'd passed away, I never would have come to terms with it. So I just said, at this point, let me just dive into this and we'll get through it. And I told my mom, I said, I'm going to make the video because it'll help people. And my mom told me flat out, if you think it's going to help people and it's going to do something good, then go ahead and make the video. And I made the video the next day. I put it out, and like the response was just, I mean, you're opening yourself up to be just destroyed by the trolls. And I knew it. I said, there's going to be negative feedback, positive, there's going to be a blend of it. And I'd say it was like 99% positive feedback and, maybe 1% negative feedback.
Now, what about the topic of steroids? Because obviously you've made videos where you talk about your experience with steroids. And obviously, you tell people not to do it, right, specifically, or many times you told them not to do it, but then you did it, and then, of course, do you feel ever responsible? Because the thing is, kids listen to you, right? And do you ever think that even though you're telling them not to do it, they're still going to do it just because you did it?
I think that my message comes across a little bit differently. Like, I'm not the guy that comes to your school who's like a professor and says, don't do drugs, stay in school. I'm the guy that says, I just actually had a kid ask me this, this trip in the expo. He said, what do you regret doing steroids? I said, I would not be standing here talking to you right now if I didn't do steroids. If I hadn't taken steroids, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Arnold Schwarzenegger wouldn't be who he was without them. So for us to say that we regret them would be a lie. Was it, a means to an end? Yes. Did I have other things going for me at the time? Honestly, no. I had learning disabilities that kept me from doing well in school. I had no direction. I was getting in trouble. Taking the steroids kept me in the gym and kept me moving in that positive way, even though it was destructive to my body. So it was almost like a trade-off. It was like, is it more good than bad that's happening, and what's the trade-off for? For me, the trade-off was, it worked out. Here I am right now doing this interview in Generation IR, which never would have happened if I hadn't taken steroids. I never would have gotten out there like that. But when these kids come up to me, like I had a kid who was like 19, and he was like, I'm in school for this, that, I want to compete. What do you think? And I was like, you're 19. What are you going to school for? He was in school for law or something like that. And I said, look, do what you got to do, get your degree. Competing isn't going anywhere. It's always going to be there. You're not, at 19, I remember thinking I was mature enough to be able to handle drugs and stuff like that. I wasn't. Give it time, think about it a little while, finish what you're doing first, and then, when you're a little bit older, if you decide this is the route I want to go down, you take a more responsible look at it and decide if it's for you. I personally don't have a moral issue with steroids whatsoever. I mean, most people, don't have an issue with smoking or drinking or whatever, Tylenol, whatever the case may be. It's a legal issue. I don't want to see these kids get wrapped up in something, get locked up because they got a couple bottles of testosterone shipped to them from somewhere, and now they have a felony arrest record that they can't get a job later on, even though they do have a degree.
Do you think steroid use is an issue especially amongst just teenagers and young adults that are getting into weightlifting?
Yeah, nowadays I think it definitely is. I mean, back in the day, when I was in high school, maybe a couple kids, got their hands on some D-ball or something like that. And nowadays, with the the push of the internet, I think that the first one really was this Ziz guy, or Ziz, I'm not sure how to say his name. But when he first came out, and what he became was larger than life and talked about the drugs, and he was so much younger that this younger crowd, who was even younger than him, like 15, 16, were looking up to him saying, I can look good, I can get girls, I can party, I can be, I can be all these things. I just got to take the drugs. And I think that was the first real big push. The thing is, part of it's easily available. Back when I was first starting steroids, you had to go to the gym and get to know all the big guys that were on the gear. You had to be around, training hard. They had to trust you. You had to get inside the inner circle. And even then, it was super expensive, to buy back then. It's just so easy to get nowadays, and the information is just being thrown at them. You have to take this. You should take this. This is the right way to do it. And I think that until these black market things get shut down, literally shut down to where they can't get it accessibly, and the price goes up to maybe $250 a bottle or something like that, I don't think it's going to make a dent.
Now, I keep hearing this new epidemic of synthol use, or some kind of oil people injecting and basically creating fake muscle. Yeah. Is that happening around around the industry?
I mean, I'm not seeing it in the gyms itself. In the gym, where I train at and stuff. I used it. I was one of the first people to use Chris Clark synthesized back in the day. I was actually a face of a company. I forget what board it was on, Mesomorphos, I think. And they were having a hard time getting people promoting it because everybody was trying to keep it a secret. And they sent me a couple bottles of it. I tried it in my shoulders. I was like, yeah, this stuff is great. If you want, it was $100 a bottle. And I didn't have any money, so I was like, if you want to send me the bottles, I'll be the face of your company. And I was actually on the website as having used it and stuff. And it definitely inflates the muscle and swells it up and inflames it. But here I am 20 years later, and my arms are not any bigger than they were when I started using it. I mean, they were while I was using it. So is it widespread? I just asked somebody the other day, another pro, I said, do you hear about guys using it? He said, I keep hearing it. He goes, but I don't see that look. He's like, very rarely do I ever see that look. I think he said some of the European guys might be using it more than the American guys. Like Boston Lloyd uses it, and he's very open about using it. And you wouldn't even be able to tell if he didn't tell you. It's not like it's so absurd looking. Everybody talks about Greg Valentino using it, and he said he never used it. He didn't even know what it was. So I don't see it a whole lot anymore. If they are using it, they're not using it to the extent where they deform themselves.
So when you did it, it was basically to enhance the muscle you already had.
I have narrow shoulders by nature. My clavicles are narrow, and I needed to have that wider look. And Trevor Smith, who owned Nuclear Nutrition, was the one that was selling, I think it was SEO was his brand. He was explaining how if you put it in the muscle right, it just kind of swells it up. It gives it a half an inch to an inch. But shoulder-wise, it's going to make you look a lot bigger on stage. So, when I started thinking about it, I said, okay, this is probably the route I have to go because I'm doing everything I can. It's not working. And, of course, I was young. I wanted the results now. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'll just wait another 5 years and eventually the muscle will come. So I said, at that point, I literally have tried things that, I was one of the first people in my area to try insulin back in the day. I used PGF2, the Ludolase. I ordered that stuff from Mexico. I was doing everything under the sun to try to become a pro bodybuilder, so nothing was off limits. But, I look back now and am I sorry I did it? It was interesting. It hurt and it was awful, but, I don't regret doing it because now I know when people ask me about it, I can tell them it's not permanent muscle. It hurts to do, and it's just not worth it in the long run. So,
what is your take on professional men's bodybuilding today?
These guys are the pros, are the best in the world, so you want to see the best in the world. But I think the judging criteria, what's happening now, is people Phil Heath's a big guy, but Phil Heath's very aesthetic for his size. Dexter Jackson, again, the shape. Sean Roden, the shape. It's getting away from, nothing against Branch Warren, but it's getting away from the Branch Warrens and the guys that are blockier, like this new guy, Dallas McCarver or something like that. He's big, but he's symmetrical. So I think that, they're going to try to go away from the big bloated stomachs, not the mass at all costs. These guys are still going to be massive, but the guys with the better genetics and structures, I think, are the ones that are going to be getting rewarded now. So you're going to see the top pro bodybuilding, that open class, kind of changed a little bit as far as like the symmetry and stuff like that, and away from the mass monsters. We're not going to see a Ronnie Coleman who had the mass and the shape for, I don't know how long, or if ever again. There was a lot of guys that don't want to push themselves to that level. That gives classic physique a chance, but I think it's just going to be people that, I mean, I'm always going to be a fan of, Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Kevin Levrone, the guys that were just massive and looked good, and then you get the guys who, didn't really look that good. I mean, Marcus, not that they didn't look good, but Marcus Rule, Akeem Albrecht, these guys that were just massive and had, not the same genetic structure. It's still really cool to watch and stuff, but I don't think it's going to kill bodybuilding. I think it's going to start changing bodybuilding at some point.
Now, why do they have bloated stomachs?
Everybody blames it on, growth hormone and insulin. Look, I took more growth hormone and insulin than the next guy. I mean, I took tons of that stuff for years. I brought my waist down to a 27 and a quarter this year to compete in physique. So if it's legitimately organ growth, there's no way my waist would have come down to that again. Now, I've had my waist up to a 40-inch waist before, where my stomach was completely bloated. Now, why was it a 40-inch waist? I was eating 10 meals a day and like 9,000 calories, trying to jam down 9,000 calories, which I probably successfully get 7,000. You eat 7,000 calories worth of clean food, your stomach is going to stick out. It's like the day of the show, Dorian Yates said he barely used to eat at all to try to keep his stomach flat. When I did physique this year, I literally had a little bit of chicken breast in the morning. My stomach was flat as a board. I saw guys backstage eating rice cakes and peanut butter, which is not really a lot of food, but was enough to make their stomachs bloat. So when they hit their quarter turns, it would stick out a little bit. So I really don't believe the hype about IGF and growth hormone and insulin. No, I don't believe that's what's causing the guts. I believe it's a massive amount of calories, and their frames are not made to hold that amount of muscle to begin with. So everything starts to look distorted. So you have like the transversus that loosens up, allows the stomach to stick out. Everything kind of looks weird, but I don't think it's the receptors in the organs and stuff and all that shit. I honestly think it's the food. I mean, Jay Cutler also pointed out that he said, when he was Mr. Olympia or even competing, his waist was wide from the front because he was wide boned, but he never had a big stomach. But he said, listen, he trained abs almost every single day. He didn't eat tons of food. He ate a lot of carbohydrates, but he said I would have, if I was eating like 400 grams of carbs for a meal, he's like, I would have a carb drink, rice, and then like oatmeal. He's like, I'd have different things that would go right through my system really fast. He goes, my stomach never stuck out. Because, but now these guys nowadays, their big thing is like, eating so much protein, and a lot of them are trying to incorporate junk foods. I don't know if you've seen everybody out there doing the flexible dieting. They're like, a carb's a carb. Well, they're like, well, I'm going to have Pop-Tarts and stuff like that. They're getting inflammation due to certain things in their body that they're taking with the drugs, the foods. I mean, there's so many factors. But then we saw Phil Heath have a stomach issue last year, or 2014, and everybody was like, oh, the drugs are getting to him. His stomach was flat as a board this year. He said flat out, he said, I ate something that was not digesting. And he didn't say exactly what it was, but I know that a lot of guys, if they're trying to carb load without enough water and trying to deplete water, the carbs don't digest. They just sit in your stomach and your stomach distends. So at that point, you look like you have this big gut, but, that's not really a fact. Once the food's processed and out of your system, you don't have it.
Tune into Generation Iron Podcast with Kai Green every Wednesday.
Like I say, there's just no set standard, and it's not like we need some official rules or anything. Just some basic stuff, that the audience can follow. I've been following the sport for 30 years, and sometimes I go to shows and I have no idea what's going on, and I should be an expert. I am an expert.